I walked up to the lectern with the paper in my hand. I was terrified. I grabbed the lectern's wooden edges to stop me from swaying. How can I do this? Don't look at the audience, said a voice inside me. And then another voice inside said, look at the audience. I looked, hundreds of faces, Dad's colleagues, Dad's friends. The fear vanished in an instant. I told the story I hoped they would understand. He's a boy standing by a fence and staring up into the sky. He's at an aerodrome, Biggin Hill, spotting RAF planes. He's 9, 10. He's been photographing each aircraft that takes off or lands with the brown boxy camera that hangs on a string around his neck, and putting their numbers down in a spiral-bound notebook. It is getting late. He ought to leave. Then he hears a sound he cannot place, an unfamiliar engine note. And yes, there. This is it. This is the moment that he's dreamed of. He stares into the sky. He sees the landing lights of. He doesn't know what it is. He doesn't know what it is. It's not in any of the books. He takes its picture. He copies its registration number onto the page. It is a visitation from the future, a new American Air Force plane. To the boy plane spotter of the 1950s, it's like seeing the Holy Grail. A hand then fell on his shoulder and a voice said, "Come with me, laddie." They frog marched him to the guardhouse, pushed him through the door, and there behind the desk a sergeant major type with a mustache and a frown stood up, barked at him, ripped the page out of his notebook, screwed it up into a ball and threw it in the bin, shouted some more, took the back off the camera, exposed the roll of film, pulled it out in loops of falling acetate, and dumped that into the bin too. I was crying my eyes out, Dad said. They said, "Go home. You didn't see anything. Forget you were here." And they dumped me back at the perimeter, and I stood there with my notebook and my brownie, sobbing away. But then I stopped crying, because I thought of something that out of Dick Barton or the Eagle. Maybe I'd written hard enough. Using his pencil, he shaded the page of his notebook with graphite, and there, white on gray, impressed on the page from the missing page above, was the registration number of the secret plane. He stopped crying, he said, and cycled home in triumph. Afterward, people came up and talked about Dad, and all the old guard were there, snappers from back in the 1960s, and I finally got to put names to the bylines I'd seen so many times. They told me they liked the story. They said it was nice to know that my father was a born journalist, that the boy in short trousers was already the man they'd known, the man who always got the picture, had always pulled the story from the jaws of defeat. Months later, I found my father's plane spotting diaries at the bottom of his bookshelves. 6 hardbacked, cloth-spine exercise books. I pulled one out at random, 1956. He was 16 then. The pages are divided into columns, headed with careful, inked capitals. I look at the first column. On the 25th of April, he starts watching at 9:40 a.m. and leaves at 7 p.m. On the 26th, he starts at 9 and ends at 9 p.m. 12 hours of looking up at the sky. Good God. There are hundreds of pages and thousands of aircraft here. It's then that the knowledge of why my father watched planes drops into my head. When he and his friends had been small boys running feral across London bomb sites from World War II, he told me they collected things. Shrapnel, cigarette packets, coins, mostly things that came in series. Things that could be matched and swapped, sets that could be completed. Collecting things like this, I realized, must have stitched together their broken world of rubble, made sense of a world disoriented by war. And my father's aeroplanes were just as much of a set to collect a series of beautiful, moving things with names and numbers, all deeply concerned with danger and survival. But there was more. Airplanes had wings. They took flight, and if you knew them, watched them, understood their movements, you could somehow take flight too. In watching the planes, you fly with them and escape. They enlarge your little world and spread it across the seas. The notebooks are full of a fierce attention to things I do not know, but now I know what they are for. They are records of ordered transcendence, a watcher's diary. My father's talk of patience had held within it all the magic that is waiting and looking up at the moving sky. I put the notebook back, and as I do, there's a piece of brown cardboard between the next two notebooks on the shelves. Puzzled, I pull it out. It's a blank piece of thick card cut roughly along one edge. I turn it over. My heart misses a beat, because stuck to the other side is a silver door key under 3 inches of clear tape, and 5 words written in pencil. Key to flat. Love, Dad. Dad had posted it to me last year so I could stay at his flat in London when he was away. I'd lost it, of course. My daughter, the absent-minded professor, he'd said, rolling his eyes. Don't worry, I'll get another one cut. But he never got round to it, and I hadn't thought of it since. I don't know what it's doing here. I held the cardboard and felt the scissor-cut edge, and for the first time I understood the shape of my grief. I could feel exactly how big it was. It was the strangest feeling, like holding something the size of a mountain in my arms. You have to be patient, my father said. If you want to see something very much, you have to be patient and wait. There was not patience in my waiting, but time had passed all the same and worked its careful magic. And now, holding the card in my hands and feeling its edges, all the grief had turned into something different. It was now simply love. I tucked the card back into the bookshelf. Love you too, Dad, I whispered. Mr. Toastmaster.